My daughter came to my house for Sunday dinner, and when she reached into her purse for her phone, a pill bottle fell out onto my kitchen table. She grabbed it back so fast she knocked over her water glass. Her hands were shaking. Her face went white, like she'd been caught doing something illegal. "Ellie," I said, "what was that?" "Nothing, Dad. Just vitamins." She wouldn't look at me. I've known my daughter for 34 years. I know what her lying face looks like. She's had it since she was 7 years old and broke my late wife's favorite vase. That wasn't vitamins, and that wasn't nothing. I let it go that night, because that's what you do when your grown daughter tells you to back off. But I didn't forget it. And 2 days later, a nurse grabbed my arm in a hospital hallway and said words I will never forget as long as I live. "Mr. Wilkinson, somebody is doing this to her on purpose, and I think you already know who." I did know. I just didn't want to believe it. My daughter's husband, Leon Barry, had been sitting across from me at every Sunday dinner for 2 years, laughing at my jokes, calling my granddaughters his girls, bringing me a six-pack when he came to pick up the kids. The whole time, he was killing my daughter, one dose at a time, and none of us saw it. Or maybe some of us didn't want to. By the end of this story, you'll understand exactly how a man gets away with murder in broad daylight in a house 2 miles from where I live. Watch till the end. Tell me what city you're watching from, because I read every single comment. Let me back up to the beginning, before the hospital, before the hallway. I noticed something was wrong with Ellie about 3 weeks before the pill bottle. I'm 64. I worked on cars for 40 years. You learn to hear a bad engine before it stalls out. And my daughter, she'd started sounding like a bad engine. She used to call me every Wednesday, no matter what. Never missed one, not since her mother passed. But those calls got shorter, quieter. She'd hang up fast, like someone was waiting on her. Then I saw her in person at Rosie's school play, and it hit me like a fist to the chest. My daughter who used to run 3Ks on weekends just for fun, looked like she hadn't slept in a month. Her cheekbones were sharp under skin that looked gray under the gym lights. Her wedding ring hung loose on her finger. "You feeling okay, honey?" I asked her in the parking lot after. "Just tired, Dad. Work's been a lot." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Leon showed up right behind her, hand landing on the small of her back, not gentle, more like he was steering her. "He's been pushing herself too hard," he said, all smiles, the same charm that had won me over at their engagement dinner. "The whole time. I keep telling her to slow down, right, babe?" Ellie nodded along. And that's when I noticed it, how she went quiet the second he touched her, how she seemed to fold in on herself, smaller, like she was trying to take up less space in the world. I told myself it was nothing. New marriage, 2 little kids, demanding job. Of course she was tired. I told myself that for 3 more weeks, right up until the Sunday dinner where the pill bottle hit my table. After she left that night, Leon waiting in the driveway, engine running like he was timing her, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the spot where the bottle had fallen. I hadn't gotten a good look at the label, but I'd gotten a good look at her face, and that face told me everything the label couldn't. 2 days later, Ellie collapsed at the grocery store. A stranger called 911. By the time I got the call and drove to the hospital, my hands were shaking so bad I almost ran a red light on Tunnel Road. I found her room, found her hooked up to an IV, pale as the sheets she was lying on. Leon was already there, sitting close, holding her hand, telling the nurse how worried he'd been, how he'd begged her to see a doctor for weeks. I believed him. God help me, I believed him, right up until the nurse pulled me into the hallway 10 minutes later. "Mr. Wilkinson," she kept her voice low, glancing back toward the room. "Can I speak to you privately? It's about your daughter's blood work." I followed her past the nurse's station, my stomach twisting with every step. She stopped near a supply closet, out of earshot from Ellie's room, out of earshot from Leon. Her lab results don't make sense for exhaustion. There are markers in her blood that don't add up to overwork or stress or anything normal. I've seen this pattern before, a long time ago in a different hospital. She hesitated, like she was deciding to cross a line she wasn't supposed to. Mr. Wilkinson, somebody is doing this to her on purpose, and I think you already know who. I turned my head back toward Ellie's room. Through the narrow window in the door, I could see Leon leaning over my daughter's bed, brushing the hair back from her face with a tenderness that looked for the first time in 2 years completely wrong. "Don't say anything to him yet, not until we know more," the nurse whispered. I nodded, but my mind was already racing backward, through every Sunday dinner, every time he'd cooked for her, every cup of coffee he'd handed her with a smile. I looked back through that window one more time, and Leon looked up, right at me, right through the glass, and for just a second before the smile came back, I saw something in his eyes that I recognized from the garage, the look a man gets right before he knows you're about to catch him in a lie. He knew that I knew.
Leon didn't come out into the hallway. He just kept looking at me through that narrow window for a few seconds too long, then turned back to Ellie like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just found out he might be the reason my daughter was lying in that bed. I went back into the room because I didn't know what else to do. My legs took me there before my brain caught up. "Any news?" Leon asked me, standing up, giving me his seat like the good son-in-law he'd always played at being. "Doctor said something about her potassium being off, probably not eating enough, with the kids and work and everything." I sat down next to my daughter and took her hand. It was cold, too cold for a room that warm. "I'm fine, Dad," Ellie said, before I'd even asked, like she'd rehearsed it. "Really, I just need rest." I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake the truth out of her. Instead, I squeezed her hand and said, "Rest sounds good, honey." And I watched Leon's shoulders relax just slightly, like he'd been holding his breath. They kept her 2 nights. I came every day, and every day Leon was already there when I arrived and still there when I left. He never gave me 1 minute alone with her, not one. He'd step out to grab coffee and come back before I'd gotten 3 sentences into asking her anything real. On Thursday, they let her go home. I offered to help, cook a few meals, watch the girls after school so she could rest. Leon smiled that same smile and said, "We've got it handled, Gabe. She just needs quiet." Quiet. That word sat wrong with me the whole drive home. I called Ellie every day that week. Half the time, Leon answered her phone. "She's sleeping. She's got a headache. She's not really up for a call right now. You understand." I understood less every single time he said it. By Thursday, I couldn't sit still anymore. I drove to their house without calling first, something I hadn't done in over a year because Leon always made it clear, in his polite way, that dropping by unannounced wasn't really welcome in his house. I knocked. Leon answered, filling the doorway before I could see past him. "Gabe, wasn't expecting you." Not a question, a statement with an edge under it. "Came to see my daughter. She's resting. I'll be quiet." Something flickered across his face, the same look from the hospital window. Then, behind him, I heard Ellie's voice, small. "Dad?" Leon stepped aside, but not far, just enough. Ellie was sitting on the couch in a long-sleeved shirt, even though the house was warm enough that Leon himself was in short sleeves. Her skin had a color to it I didn't like, not sick pale, but something grayer, something wrong. When she saw me, something moved behind her eyes. Relief, maybe, or fear that I'd leave again. "I brought soup," I lied, holding up an empty hand, because I hadn't brought anything. I just needed an excuse to knock. "Left it in the car. I'll grab it." It bought me 30 seconds. 30 seconds where Leon's eyes weren't on me. "Ellie," I said quietly, crouching by the couch, "roll up your sleeve, please." She hesitated, looked toward the kitchen where I could hear Leon running water, keeping half an ear on us like he always did. Then she pulled the sleeve back. Bruises, 4 of them, evenly spaced, dark purple fading to yellow-green at the edges. Not the kind you get bumping into a door frame, the kind you get from fingers. "Ellie, I bruise easy now," she whispered, fast, like she'd said it 100 times to 100 people. "I've been anemic. The doctor said—" Did he say that? Or did Leon say that? She didn't answer. She just pulled her sleeve back down as the water shut off in the kitchen. I left 20 minutes later without the soup I never had. Leon walked me to my car himself, hand on my shoulder the whole way, telling me how much he appreciated me looking out for Ellie, how he knew families were close, how he just wanted what was best for her. I drove 2 blocks, pulled over, and sat in my car shaking harder than I had in years. Then I called Dr. Gallagher's office, Max Gallagher, who'd been our family doctor since Ellie was in diapers, who'd delivered the news of my wife's cancer 11 years ago with the same steady voice he'd need again now. "Gabriel," he said, once I got him on the phone and got the words out, the bruises, the grayness, the way Leon never let her out of his sight. "I need you to get her in here, today if you can, without him. He doesn't let her go anywhere without him. Then you're going to have to find a way." I sat in that car for another 10 minutes, staring at their house from 2 blocks away, watching Leon's silhouette move behind the living room curtains, always near her, always circling. I didn't know what he was doing to her yet, not the details, not the how. All I knew was that a man who claimed to love my daughter had turned their home into something that looked, from the outside, exactly like a cage. And I knew one more thing sitting there, with my hands still shaking on the wheel. Whatever it took, I was getting her out of that house, even if she didn't think she needed to leave.
I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, trying to figure out how in the hell I was going to get my daughter alone for even 20 minutes when her own husband wouldn't let her answer her own phone. The answer came from Rosie, of all people, my granddaughter, 6 years old, calling me the next afternoon from Ellie's cell. "Grandpa, can you come to my dance recital Saturday? Mommy said you could pick me and Hannah up after 'cause she has a headache." Leon's voice in the background, muffled, saying something I couldn't make out. Then Ellie's voice, closer to the phone. "Dad, if you don't mind taking the girls after, so I can rest." I heard something in her voice I hadn't heard in weeks. Not fear this time. Something more like hope, like she was handing me a door and hoping I'd notice it was open. "Course, honey, I'll take good care of them." Saturday, I picked up 2 granddaughters from a school gymnasium, and I didn't take them home. I took them to my house, called Ellie to tell her, and heard Leon in the background say, loud enough for me to catch it, "Just for tonight, Gabe. She needs her girls close." I ignored that. I called Dr. Gallagher instead. "Meet me at your office in an hour," I said. "I'm bringing her." I called Ellie back. "Come get the girls' pajamas from my place. I've got dinner going." Another lie, but a useful one. She showed up alone 40 minutes later, Leon staying home, thinking she was just running an errand. I didn't take her to my house. I drove straight to Dr. Gallagher's office, and I watched my daughter's face go through fear, then anger, then something like relief in the space of 2 blocks. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Saving your life, if I'm not too late." Dr. Gallagher ran blood work that afternoon, on a Saturday, calling in a favor from the lab himself. He examined the bruises. He asked Ellie questions I could tell she didn't want to answer, about her appetite, her memory, the headaches, the way her hands had started shaking some mornings. "I've been forgetting things," Ellie admitted quietly, staring at her lap. "Where I put my keys, what day it is sometimes. Leon says it's stress. He's been so patient with me about it." Dr. Gallagher's face didn't change, but I saw something behind his eyes go cold. The results came back Monday. He called me first, not Ellie, and his voice had that same steady calm from 11 years ago, right before he told me my wife wasn't going to make it. "Gabriel,
There's something in her system that shouldn't be there. It's consistent with something being introduced into her food or drink repeatedly over months. I've already called it in. There's a detective who needs to speak with both of you today." Her name was Nicole Wright. She met us at Dr. Gallagher's office an hour later, a woman about Ellie's age with tired eyes that told me this wasn't her first case like this. "Mrs. Barry, I need to ask you some hard questions about your husband." Ellie's hands were shaking again, worse now. "This is insane. Leon wouldn't. He loves me. He takes care of me. He's the one who's been so worried about my health." "That's what concerns me. The person controlling your food is the same person telling you not to worry about your symptoms." I watched my daughter's whole world crack open right there in that small office. I watched her mind go back through 2 years of coffee he made her every morning, dinners he insisted on cooking, vitamins he picked out special from some supplier online. "The vitamins," Ellie whispered. "He started giving me vitamins about 6 months ago." Detective Wright's partner, a younger man named Dylan Scott, had been quiet until then, working through paperwork on his laptop. He looked up. "Mrs. Barry, do you know if your husband was married before you?" "No, I'm his first wife. He told me that." Detective Scott turned the laptop toward us. A photo, a woman, blonde, smiling, maybe 30 years old. "This is Diane Cole. She died 4 years before your husband met you. Officially, natural causes. Unofficially, her family always believed otherwise, but there was never enough evidence to reopen it. She had symptoms very similar to yours: fatigue, memory loss, bruising. She lost 40 pounds in the last 4 months of her life." The room went silent except for the sound of my daughter's breathing, coming faster and faster, until it broke into something close to a sob. "He told me I was his first love, his first everything." "We need to move carefully," Detective Wright said, glancing between us. "If he suspects anything before we have enough evidence, he could destroy it, or he could become dangerous fast. Mrs. Barry, I need you to go home tonight and act normal. Can you do that?" I opened my mouth to object, to say absolutely not. My daughter is not walking back into that house. But Ellie spoke first, her voice steadier than I expected. "I can do that. I have to for the girl's sake, don't I? If I disappear tonight, he'll know something's wrong." Detective Wright nodded slowly. "One night. We'll have someone watching the house. Tomorrow we move forward with next steps." I drove Ellie back towards that house 2 hours later, my chest so tight I could barely breathe, watching my daughter stare out the window at the neighborhood she'd once loved, now looking at it like enemy territory. "Dad," said Ellie as I pulled up 2 houses down, keeping the car in park at the curb, "if something happens tonight, if he finds out I know—" "Nothing's going to happen. I'll be right down the street." She reached over and squeezed my hand harder than I expected from someone who'd looked so fragile just days ago. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, honey. Go on. I'll be watching." I watched her walk up that driveway, shoulders straight, and disappear through the front door, watched the porch light click off behind her, and then I watched Leon's silhouette appear in the living room window, standing very still, watching her walk in, like he already knew something had changed.
I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat in my car 2 houses down until 3 in the morning, watching that porch light stay dark, watching shadows move behind the curtains every so often, until my phone buzzed with a text from Ellie. "He's asleep. I'm okay. Go home, Dad." I didn't believe okay for 1 second, but I went home, because staying parked on that street any longer would have made Leon suspicious, and suspicious was the one thing we couldn't afford yet. Detective Wright called me at 7 the next morning. "We want to move forward today," she said. "Ellie's agreed to wear a wire into the house this afternoon. We need him talking about the vitamins, about Diane Cole, anything that connects him to what he's doing." "You're sending my daughter back in there with a microphone taped to her chest?" We'll have a unit 30 feet from that house the entire time. The second anything feels wrong, we move in." I hated it. I said so, loudly, more than once. But Ellie had already said yes before anyone asked me, because it was her life, her choice, and she'd earned the right to make it herself. I met her and Detective Scott at a gas station 2 miles from the house, out of sight of anyone Leon might have watching. Ellie sat on the back of an unmarked van, while the technician fitted a small device under her blouse, testing it twice, telling her exactly what to say if anything went wrong. Her hands were steady, steadier than mine. "You don't have to do this," I told her one last time. "Yes, I do," she said. "For Rosie and Hannah, for Diane, for every version of me that almost figured this out in time." I drove her within 2 blocks of the house myself, the same as the day before, except this time the surveillance van was already parked further down the street, disguised as a cable company truck. "Remember," Detective Wright's voice came through my radio once Ellie was out of the car and walking. "Keep it natural. Don't push. Let him talk." 20 minutes of silence on that radio felt like 20 years. Then Leon's voice, warm, almost tender. "Hey, sweetheart. Feeling better today?" "Much better. I think the vitamins are finally working. I actually feel like myself again." "See? I told you I'd take care of you." A pause. Something shifting. "You want one now? You look a little pale." "Sure. Thank you, Leon. I don't know what I'd do without you looking after me like this." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white, listening to my daughter thank the man poisoning her, listening to him hand her whatever was in that bottle, listening to her swallow it down for the sake of a recording. For a while, it worked. Leon talked. He talked about the vitamin supplier, some online source he trusted, how he always measured her dose carefully because her body was sensitive. Small details, big evidence. Then his voice changed, sharper, colder. "Your phone's been off for 2 days, Ellie. That's not like you. I told you I wasn't feeling well, didn't want to be bothered. You always keep your phone on, even when you're sick, even when you're sleeping." A long pause. "Why are you asking me so many questions about the vitamins today? You've never asked before." "I'm just curious. I want to understand my own treatment." "Turn around." My stomach dropped straight through the floor of my car. "Leon, what's wrong with you?" I said, "Turn around, let me see you." A beat. Then his voice went low, flat, terrifying in a way charm had never let it sound before. "There's something under your shirt. What is that?" "Leon, is that a wire? Are you wearing a wire?" Detective Wright's voice cut across the radio. "All units, move in now." Through the radio, chaos. Leon shouting, something crashing, my daughter's voice rising into something I'd never heard from her before, pure animal fear. "You brought cops into my house after everything I've done for you? You've been poisoning me," Ellie screamed. "You killed Diane. I know everything." "Nobody's going to believe a dying woman's story once you're gone," Leon said, and his voice had gone somewhere I don't have words for. "I already told you. I take care of you, one way or the other." I was out of my car before I even realized I'd opened the door, running down that sidewalk towards a house I had no business running into unarmed, 64 years old, screaming my daughter's name into a radio nobody was listening to anymore because everybody was already moving. I heard glass break. I heard Ellie scream, one long, terrible sound that I will hear for the rest of my life, whether I want to or not. Then I heard officers shouting, "Down, get down, hands where I can see them." And then, worst of all, silence. Detective Wright's voice came back on the radio, breathless, running. "Suspect is down. We need paramedics at the house immediately. The victim is—" The radio cut, or she stopped talking, or I stopped being able to hear anything over the sound of my own heartbeat as I reached that front lawn and saw an ambulance screaming up the street behind me. saw Detective Scott physically stop me from going up those porch steps, his hand flat against my chest. "Sir, you can't go in there yet. That's my daughter in there. Sir, I tell you if she's alive." I screamed it right into his face, my whole life balanced on whatever came out of his mouth next. "Tell me if my daughter is alive."
"Sir." Detective Scott's hand stayed flat against my chest, his eyes locked on mine. "She's alive. She's breathing. The paramedics have her." My knees nearly gave out right there on the lawn. I don't remember deciding to cry. I just remember the sound coming out of me, some noise I'd never made before in 64 years of living. They wouldn't let me see her until the ambulance doors were already closing. I caught one glimpse. Ellie, on the stretcher, oxygen mask over her face, a cut above her eyebrow, but her eyes open, awake, looking for me. When she found my face in the crowd, she lifted one hand off the stretcher, just slightly, like she was telling me she was still here. I followed that ambulance to the hospital, in a state I can't fully describe, somewhere between prayer and rage. Leon didn't make it out of that house standing. He'd grabbed a kitchen knife when the officers breached, gone at Ellie with it when he realized there was no talking his way out anymore, and one of the responding officers had shot him in the shoulder before he could reach her. He survived. I wasn't glad about that, not at first. I wanted him gone from this earth. But Detective Wright told me something later that changed my mind. A dead man can't confess. A dead man can't stand trial, where Diane Cole's family finally hears the truth out loud. She was right. I just didn't want her to be. Ellie spent 4 days in the hospital. The wound from the struggle needed stitches, but it was the years of poison finally leaving her system that took the real toll, her body shaking through withdrawal from something it had learned to depend on just to function. I sat beside that bed every single day, holding her hand the way I used to when she was small and scared of thunderstorms. "I keep thinking about Diane," she told me on the 3rd day, staring at the ceiling. "She didn't have anyone drop a pill bottle on a kitchen table. Nobody caught it in time for her." "You're going to make sure people know her name," I said. "That's something." The investigation moved fast once Leon's house got searched properly. Detective Scott found a locked filing cabinet in the garage, records going back years, purchase receipts, a notebook tracking Ellie's weight, her symptoms, dates, dosages, like she was a science experiment instead of her wife. A folder with photographs of Diane Cole from her final months, the same kind of slow decline, documented step by step. He'd increased Ellie's life insurance policy 8 months earlier, $600,000, with himself as sole beneficiary. He'd also, we learned, been in contact with a lawyer about full custody of Rosie and Hannah in the event anything happened to her, custody that would have cut me out of their lives completely. The trial took place at the Buncombe County Courthouse, less than 3 miles from the house where it all happened. Ellie testified for 6 hours over 2 days. I sat in that courtroom every minute, watching my daughter, pale, thin, but steady, describe in plain, exact words what it feels like to be slowly murdered by someone who calls it love. Diane Cole's older brother, Reese, flew in from Ohio to testify about his sister's final months, the isolation, the confusion, the family who'd never been allowed to say goodbye properly because nobody believed them at the time. He sat 2 rows behind us every day of that trial. On the last day, he found me in the hallway and shook my hand for a long time, without saying anything at all. The jury took less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: attempted murder, the murder of Diane Cole, fraud, and enough besides that the judge didn't hesitate. Life without parole. Leon didn't look at Ellie when the verdict was read. He looked at me. I don't know what he wanted from that look. I didn't give him anything back. It's been 8 months now.
We didn't leave Asheville. Ellie thought about it once in the hospital, talked about starting over somewhere far away where nobody knew the story. But this is her home. Mine too. And running from that house felt like letting Leon decide, one more time, where she was allowed to live her life. Instead, she sold it, used what was left after the legal fees to buy a smaller place 4 streets over from mine, close enough that Rosie rides her bike to my porch most afternoons, close enough that I hear Hannah's laugh through my kitchen window some evenings when the wind's right. Ellie's back to running again, slow at first, just around the block, building back the strength that had been stolen from her, one dose at a time. Last week she ran a full 5K, the first one in 3 years. I stood at the finish line with both girls, and when she crossed it, she didn't look tired. She looked like someone who'd already survived the hardest race of her life and knew it. She started talking to Diane's brother about something, a foundation maybe, or just a way to make sure other families know the warning signs before it's too late. She hasn't decided exactly what shape it will take yet. She says she's still learning to trust her own judgment again, one decision at a time. Some nights, I still drive past that old house without meaning to. My hands just find the route out of old worry, even though there's nothing there to watch anymore. New family living there now. Different curtains in the window, a basketball hoop in the driveway that was never there before. I used to think love looked like someone taking care of you. I know better now. Love doesn't ask you to disappear. It doesn't count your bruises as proof of devotion. My daughter nearly died learning that lesson, and I will spend whatever years I have left making sure my granddaughters never have to learn it the hard way she did. She's safe. She's home. And for the first time in longer than I want to admit, so am I.